How can such a beautiful place harbor so many sad and enigmatic stories? After thorough study, we've gathered some facts so that you too can learn a little more about this majestic killer. Mount Everest. Standing at 8,848 meters, Mount Everest is the tallest mountain on the planet, also known in Nepal as Sagarmatha and in Tibet as Komolungma. Let's dive into this fascinating journey, revealing 16 of the most intriguing and surprising mysteries surrounding Mount Everest. Prepare to have your mind challenged and your sense of adventure ignited with these unbelievable enigmas. The mystery of Mallory and Irvine. It is documented and proven that Edmund Hillary was the first to reach the summit of Everest in 1950. However, there is an alternative theory suggesting that George Mallory and Sandy Irvine, two English mountaineers, may have been the first in 1924. Observed only as small black spots through a telescope, they were mere 30 meters from the summit. Unfortunately, they disappeared, and it was never confirmed if they reached the summit or not. Mallory, already familiar with Everest, was on his third expedition to the mountain. He was part of the British reconnaissance expedition in 1900, which mapped the area around the mountain. He was the first European to see the western slope and realized that oxygen cylinders were essential for climbing at such high altitudes. He chose Irvine as his partner because he was skilled in handling oxygen equipment. They set off with 5 porters and a guide. The guide stayed behind to survey the mountain while Irvine followed ahead. A snowstorm hit, and the guide shouted for them to turn back, but he never saw them again. The next day, he found their camp empty. 2 sleeping bags were scratched into the shape of a T, but there was no sign of the climbers or their bodies, and they were never found. In 1999, the mystery of their camera, which could have proved they reached the summit, was missing. But there was a clue before the ascent. Mallory had promised his wife, Ruth, that he would leave her photo at the summit. He kept the photo in his inner pocket, but it wasn't with him when he died. Were Mallory and Irvine the first to conquer Everest? Well, I guess we'll never know. Haunted Mountain. In addition to being the tallest mountain in the world, Mount Everest is also the most mysterious. Several climbers have shared experiences of inexplicable phenomena and disturbing visions during their climbs. This raises the question, does Everest harbor the disturbed spirits of those who lost their lives there? A particularly unsettling narrative was shared by Pemba Dorje, a Sherpa who climbed Everest in 2004. He described witnessing shadowy figures suddenly appearing, reaching out their hands as if seeking help or food. He believed they were the ghosts of dead climbers trapped in limbo between life and death. He wasn't the only one to witness such things. Many others reported hearing voices, seeing lights, or feeling cold touches on the mountain. What is the truth behind these frightening sightings? Are they just hallucinations caused by lack of oxygen and extreme conditions, or are they evidence of something supernatural lurking on Everest? No return zone. One of the most terrifying discoveries on Mount Everest is the no return zone. This is a region above 8,000 meters where the air is so thin that it can barely sustain life. Most fatalities on the mountain occur here, as climbers struggle to breathe even with extra oxygen. The weather is also brutal, often forcing them to turn back or face death. That's why the no-return zone is also known as the death zone. It's a place where only the bravest or most reckless dare to venture or risk. Sherpa attack. Many people who climb Everest expect a divine experience and even imagine seeing the sky from the top. But for John Griffiths, a British climber, and his 2 friends, the journey turned into a nightmare when they faced an angry mob of Sherpas who blocked their path and threatened their lives. But who are the Sherpas? Sherpas are a native people of Nepal who live in the shadow of Everest. They are known for their skills and endurance at high altitudes, but they are also protectors of their land and culture. Griffiths and his friends had an altercation with some Sherpas who accused them of disrespecting their rules and traditions. They thought it was a minor misunderstanding, but they were wrong. The Sherpas came back with a vengeance, gathering about 100 men armed with stones and sticks. They hid their faces with scarves and mercilessly attacked the climbers. Griffiths and his friends tried to reason with them, but it was futile. They were outnumbered and at a disadvantage. They would have been killed if it hadn't been for the help of some brave climbers from Camp 2 who came to their rescue. One of them was Melissa Arnott, an American who had climbed Everest 4 times. She knew the Sherpas well and recognized the danger. She advised Griffiths and his friends to leave the mountain as soon as possible before it was too late. They followed her advice and escaped with their lives, but had to abandon their dream of reaching the summit. This was a terrifying ordeal that they would never forget. Strange sounds. Mount Everest is full of stories, but one of the most terrifying is about the mysterious sounds that keep climbers awake at night. When the sun doesn't set, the mountain becomes a nightmare. A loud and horrible noise echoes through the valleys, reaching long distances. It seems like the mountain is alive and angry. But what is the source of this terrible sound? Dave Hahnen, a veteran climber who reached the summit of Everest 15 times, was the first to report this phenomenon. He said he saw huge chunks of snow and ice falling from the peaks, crashing to the ground. The sound was so unbearable that he couldn't sleep. He wondered what was causing this chaos. Scientists finally found the answer. They say the sound of ice is the result of rapid temperature changes in the Himalayas. When the sun sets, the glaciers around Everest start to crack, and the ice falls from great heights, creating a deafening noise. Researchers say this is a sign of climate change and glacier melting. This is the chilling sound of ice. Yeti footprints. Imagine climbing Mount Everest, the tallest and most dangerous mountain in the world, while searching for a path to the top. Then you see a gigantic footprint in the snow, unlike any animal with fingers similar to humans. But how could a person walk barefoot in the cold, frozen ground? This is what happened to the mountaineer Eric Shipton in 1951. He found unusual footprints of a giant bipedal creature and even some hair. Could it be the legendary Yeti, a mythical beast of the Himalayas? Scientists have been trying to answer this question for decades using the latest technology and DNA analysis, but the results have been inconclusive and surprising. The hair Shipton found did not match any known animal. It was a new and unique species never seen before. Could this be proof that the Yeti exists, or is it just a hoax? Perhaps we'll never know for sure unless we find more evidence or unravel this terrifying creature. Until then, the mystery of the Yeti remains unsolved. The scariest day. Jim Davidson, a climber and geologist, faced the scariest day of his life on Everest in 2015. He was at Camp 1 when a massive magnitude 7.8 earthquake shook the mountain. It was the deadliest day in Everest's history, claiming 18 lives on the mountain and over 9,000 more in Nepal and neighboring countries. Davidson survived the earthquake but was trapped for 11 days, during which he helped other victims. Despite the trauma, Davidson, who was over 50 years old, didn't give up on his dream of reaching the summit. He returned to Everest a year later after training for up to 12 hours a day. He finally achieved his goal and stood at the highest point on Earth. He sent a message to his wife from there, saying, "I'm on top of the world." Everest with its unpredictable weather and high altitude doesn't seem ideal for life, but wildlife thrives. At 8,848 meters, Everest is home to Himalayan jumping spiders, resilient creatures that endure adverse conditions. In 1924, a British expedition even discovered unique specimens of grasshoppers, exclusive to Everest. Larger predators like the elusive snow leopard and the Himalayan tahr, a horned mammal adapted to rocky cliffs, roam the slopes. Himalayan black bears inhabit the forests at the base, while the rare red panda, similar to a binturong, resides at lower elevations, avoiding the mountain's peak. These creatures, adapted to Everest's challenges, defy expectations by surviving all odds. Soviet secret expedition. A secret Soviet expedition attempted to reach the summit from the north in 1952. They had an audacious plan to plant statues of Lenin and Stalin on the roof of the world, but they never returned to their camp. Soviet authorities denied their existence, and an article by Evgen Gibbon-Heider in the Alpine Journal in 1953 denied their fate. For decades, no one knew what happened to them until a shocking discovery in 2017. A rescue team found 4 bodies in a tent at the 4th camp while searching for a Slovak mountaineer who died of altitude sickness. But none of the agencies had reported missing climbers that year. Who were these 4 corpses, and how did they get there? The Nepalese Ministry of Tourism claimed they were from an expedition the previous year, but that didn't explain why they weren't reported or searched for. Climbers don't disappear without a trace, and those who don't return are always remembered or investigated, but these 4 remain anonymous and mysterious, like many others who perished on the highest and most enigmatic mountain. Swiss Machine. Julius Sturck was known as the Swiss Machine, a legend in the world of mountaineering. Julius Sturck had a dream to climb Everest from both sides at once, a feat never before accomplished. He had conquered many peaks that others wouldn't dare, like the Tambo and the Annapurna. He set speed records and won awards for his skill and courage. Sturck wasn't just fast but also graceful and bold. He could tackle the most difficult routes with ease, earning the respect and admiration of his peers. But in April 2017, his life was cut short by a tragic accident on the western part of the standard route to the summit of Everest, a route he had climbed before. For a climber of his caliber, it was a cruel twist of fate. No one knows for sure what caused Sturck to lose his balance and fall over 275 meters to his death. Perhaps it was the melting snow, slippery ice, or lack of oxygen. Maybe it was just bad luck. His climbing partners were too far away to see what happened and could only report the sad news. It was one of the most painful losses on Everest. Trail of feces. A huge amount of feces left behind. You may know Mount Everest for its breathtaking views, but did you know it also hides a dirty secret? The mountain is littered with human waste, and it's becoming a serious threat to the environment and climbers' health. Every year, thousands of visitors go to Everest, but they leave behind more than just their footprints. They also produce an astounding 5,443 kilograms of feces, which has nowhere to go but down. The problem is, there's no proper way to dispose of waste on the mountain. Most climbers don't want to carry it back, and there are no toilets or sanitation facilities along the way. The waste ends up in open pits, landfills, or dumps, contaminating water sources and soil. Many people get sick from drinking the polluted water even before reaching base camp. Some local residents who host tourists in the lower villages also suffer from the lack of waste management. They don't have the infrastructure or resources to deal with the influx.